I love dungeon crawls. As a matter of fact, classical dungeon crawls are the main and sole reason I got into Dungeons and Dragons in the first place, about 20 years ago. I like the gritty feeling of death around every corner, boots on the ground, trying to come up with solutions for doors that won't open and all that stuff. And I get really into it, and it's really, really addicting for me. But there are only a few books that really deliver on that department, that really set that feeling and set that tone of a classical Dungeons and Dragons dungeon crawl. But Scarlet Citadel by Kobold Press really delivers. Hi there, fellow Dungeons & Dragons players and Dungeon Masters. My name is Mr. Tarask, and this is still your go-to YouTube channel for everything Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition third-party related. And today I'm talking about Scarlet freaking Citadel. I am so genuinely excited for this, I cannot even explain it. I was waiting for a dungeon crawl like this, for a book like this, since 5th edition came out. I know there are a lot of dungeon crawls out there, I know there are a lot of good dungeon crawls out there, but this is a Kobold Press product, and every time I get one of their new products in my hands, I just can't believe they outdid themselves yet again for some particular reason. Now, if you do not know what Scarlet Citadel is, it is kick-ass. It is a citadel, a dungeon crawl underneath a citadel, actually, going from levels 1 all the way to levels 10, character levels. There's only 5 levels in the dungeon, or 6 levels in the dungeon, but character levels 0, like 1, 2, all the way up to 10. Now, I'm going to play it for my level 15 party, gonna run it for them, so I'm gonna upscale everything, but normally the levels are all the way from level 1 to level 10, and I absolutely love it, and I just want to show you why I love it so much. I have been into classical dungeon crawling ever since I played D&D. Like, the first thing I reviewed on this channel in a very awkward and old video was actually the Sunless Citadel, an official 3.5, or is it just 3rd edition adventure for Dungeons and Dragons. This is how I started playing, how I started DMing. I've ran this thing so many freaking times that I know it by heart. I can run this probably without the book. I run this for 5th edition because why not, right? I mean, okay, it's a 3.5 thing, but with a little bit of experience, you can just adjust it even on the fly. I adjust everything on the fly. Another quick, cool dungeon crawl I want to show you guys that's really underrated. I know we're talking about Scarlet Citadel today, but I just wanted to show you this real quick. Domes of Isaac Sahur by 2C Gaming. This is still one of my favorites. It is situational, as in it is supposed to be set in like a desert environment, Egypt type of thing. So it would sit perfectly in the Southlands from Kobold Press in the Midgard setting. But it is by 2C Gaming, but it's just filled with puzzles, riddles. It's freaking dangerous. It's cool. If you're ever not knowing what to run for your players, Domes of Isaac is really great. But that's not what we're here for today. What we're here for today is Scarlet Citadel, a Dungeon of Secrets. One of my favorite books I've gotten in the last year, maybe even just all out my favorite book I got in the last year, because I want to talk to you guys about it. First of all, look at this artwork, right? I've unboxed this thing, by the way, on my channel. Thanks for watching. And there's just so much going on in this artwork. These characters are just in big trouble because there's a horde of zombies or whatever coming at them. And then in the back there is another character running towards the party, but he has a bunch of dudes running after him, like an ogre and some kobolds. And then on the back you can see there's even a bridge right here, and they are throwing rocks at the players. So the players on this cover, the characters on this cover, they are in deep trouble. They might be the ones that went in there before you and died, but they are in big trouble. But I love the artwork. Now, let's talk about the book real quick. The book is has been a Kickstarter. You could have kickstarted this, but you can now also buy this. By the way, you can also buy it for almost any virtual tabletop, including Shard Tabletop, and I can give you 20% discounts via the link in the description below on your membership to Shard Tabletop, and a few selected things from Kobold Press. So you might want to click that link in the description below to get 20% discount on Shard, or 10% discount on Kobold Press products on Shard Tabletop, which is a cool deal. Now, the reason I love this so much, right, is it's a dungeon crawl. It's a classical feeling dungeon crawl. But this dungeon crawl could have fitted into one of these little flappy booklets. 80 pages, maybe 60 pages, something like that, 40 pages. It could have fitted in there. But instead, they made a full 200 pages hardcover book for a dungeon crawl. Which, to me, is just... That's amazing stuff right there. A dungeon crawl with 200 pages right there, and the pages are not filler. There's not one filler page in here. At least that's not how it feels. I just want to show you why I absolutely love it. First of all, the first section of the book gives you a general outline of what the Scarlet Citadel is. And they start off by this kind of weird two-dimensional side-scroller video game type of map. Almost Prince of Persia kind of thing, Metroid type of thing. It just gives you an idea. These are not like the rooms per se, but there's just an idea to give you what every level of the Scarlet Citadel feels like. It's cool way for the dungeon master to be like, oh yeah, we're in this atmosphere, it's kind of like this, it's kind of like that. It's cool, but that's not the reason I like the first section. The first section of the Scarlet Citadel book is a section that has no artwork, so I can just show you plain text right here, which I won't, which I just did, but I won't. Anyway, it is a mini dungeon master's guide. It reminds you completely how to run Dungeons and Dragons dungeon crawls. And I mean that in the purest way. The writer actually, by the way, it has been designed by Steve Winter. So I'm just going to say Mr. Winter or Mr. Steve or just Steve Winter or Steve. Steve did an entire section on, for example, sound. How your characters make sound by fighting creatures, by kicking in doors, by lighting a torch, whatever. Everything makes a sound. And a lot of the times, me including myself, we forget, as a dungeon master, we forget that stuff makes sounds, and we just don't really handle that, and we have every room prepared the way it is, but it is just... That's not how it's supposed to be, right? Your players might make a sound, and then the monsters in the other room hear it, and they might join in the fight, or they might just stay there and bunker themselves in to get rid of the incoming characters. They might prepare themselves. They might get help. They might do other stuff because they hurt the players. And then there's an entire section on light. Another thing I often choose to ignore as a dungeon master way too often. Your torches, your light spell, which is basically a torch, it has an area, right? So before you make you come from behind a corner or whatever, there are creatures that are going to see the flickering of your torch. They are going to see your light spell before you come in. So stealth has this advantage, all that kind of stuff. It's all in here. Another thing he really reminds us of, and this is really important, and I often forget about this when I'm running a game, is that remember that wisdom perception checks based on sight are made with disadvantage in dim light. Even if you have dark vision. Characters who rely solely on dark vision have a hard time finding traps and secret doors. The rules of 5th edition state that you can see, if you have dark vision, you can kind of see in darkness, in non-magical darkness, but you still have disadvantage on certain checks because you cannot see everything the way you would see it if there would be natural light or real light or magical light, right? Also, he states that if you are holding a torch, you're like a dragonborn with a shield, and you're holding a torch going through the dungeon, and one of your dark vision pals goes outside of your torch radius, you just don't see them anymore. And it's those kind of really important stuff that he repeats. And that's not really in the Dungeon Master's Guide, in the 4th edition, in the 3rd edition, in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. And I think Steve did a really good job of doing like this mini Dungeon Master's Guide for dungeon crawls specifically. I absolutely love the way that he did it, and that he did this for this book. For example, there's another thing: only one check is allowed. All too often, when rolls are made openly, players keep trying with different characters until somebody rolls a high number. This should not happen. Your rolls as a party or whatever, stop rolling. It doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, don't let your players do it. That's basically what he's saying. He has this entire section with all great tips for dungeon crawling. I mean, that's amazing stuff. Another thing that I think is really cool is the restocking system he kind of uses. Every level needs to be cleared, right? And when your players, this happens so often in dungeon crawls, when your players clear a level and then they go to another level and they get their ass handed to them on that level, they go back to the level they already cleared in order to restock, like rest, eat, sleep, repeat, right? So they think they're safe and whatever, and you as Dungeon Master are like, yeah, you cleared this level, you can go there in that room and you can sleep, which is utter bullshit, actually. Because this is a living and breathing dungeon. There's a boss, there's somebody who controls everything, who has like lieutenants who work for him and all that stuff. Get into that in a bit later. But as soon as your players clear a level and go to another level, the previous level might be inhabited by soldiers or undead. Somebody might place them there to stay in guard formation or whatever, so the players cannot get any sleep, or they cannot return, or they cannot go outside to restock on supplies and magical healing potions or whatever. That stuff makes sense, and that stuff makes a dungeon crawl feel like a dungeon crawl. You as an adventurer should not be, your character should not be per se enjoying what he is or she is doing, right? So you as a player, of course, are enjoying it, but Lara Croft did not enjoy hanging from a cliff, almost falling to her certain death. If she let go of the cliff, she was not enjoying that moment very much at that point. That's clear. She enjoys adventuring as a whole, but not that particular moment, right? So your players should feel like, okay, I went into the Sunless Citadel, and now I'm screwed, and I need to figure out how to or get out of here, or defeat the boss guy, figure out all the puzzles, pick all the locks, check what's going on, and they need to feel as if they are in there and that was their choice, and now they need to handle that choice and deal with it. That's what a dungeon crawl is about for me, and I think you should read this part carefully as a dungeon master. I have been a dungeon master for almost 20 years now, and I read this part and it reminded me of stuff that I lost along the way. And I'm completely honest with that. I'm honest to myself about that. I saw myself when reading this. Super important. Let's not stick there for much longer. It is after that section where the book actually begins. And where a ton of dungeon crawls, they have like this certain overarching story type of thing going on. It's never really fleshed out. For example, in the Sunless Citadel, yes, there is a nearby town, and yes, there is an inn, and yes, there is a mayor, and yes, there is some stuff going on, but Kobold Press does it really good. They bring you to the town of Red Tower. And it is right now, I want to show you really quickly. Well, I don't want to show you really quickly, but I want to tell you really quickly where this takes place. South of Zobek in Midgard is a forest called the White Forest. And near the White Forest is a town called Red Tower. And in the White Forest is the Sunless Citadel. Now, if you have no idea where that is, or you cannot find it on your map, make sure to click link in the description below. There is this map online. It is a super handy tool you can use, and you can type in any search. You can type in Red Tower or Sunless Citadel or whatever, and it will just show up on the map. And then you can show it to your players like, we're here, you're in Zobek, but you need to go here. You can take this route, or you can take this route. You can prepare some random encounters for your players to come up to Red Tower or whatever. So it is set in a certain place in Midgard. Although you can drop the Sunless Citadel anywhere in any campaign, Red Tower is specifically set in a like, it is a village type of thing, and this thing is really fleshed out. Like, this is not just, oh, there's a village here and they send you to Scarlet Citadel to retrieve a magic item or whatever. No, it's like there's a city here, a town, more, that could give you more than one adventure, like more than the Scarlet Citadel. It's just actually a place to go. It has an entire timeline for the Sunless Citadel. It has an entire history what the Sunless Citadel was, like 600 years ago, 482 years ago, 450 years ago, 450, 250 years ago, all the way up to 33 years ago. Present day, an entire section on how that was, like the entire lore is here. But the Red Tower itself is a town of 550 humans, 25 river folk, 10 dwarves, 5 elf marked, and 10 other races. There's a government, there's a defense, there's a commerce, and there's organizations, and it is like really fleshed out. But I will not go deeper into this because I don't want to. I just want you as a dungeon master to read this, check it out. There is a cool map of Red Tower, and I will most definitely use this version for running Scarlet Citadel. My players will go to Red Tower. There's an entire political system. There are reasons for people to go to the Scarlet Citadel. There are like things that can spawn mini side quests and stuff like that. It is really living and breathing. I really suggest you go. There's a gossip table, and there's really cool artwork for some of the NPCs, and there's a gossip table right here that can get your players to do all kinds of crazy stuff, because your players will also always come up with stuff that you did not prepare, but that's D&D. That makes the game fun for all of us, right? I'm right. Look at this. I just wanted to show you some of the art again. These are just some of the creatures and NPCs you will encounter in Midgard. Then there is an entire random encounters thing for Red Tower, and that's cool. So you go to Red Tower, but your players can actually also exploring the outskirts of Red Tower if they want, because there might be some reasons for them to do so. And there's an entire section on, there's an entire encounter table. Some of them are just goblins and bandits and wolves, but there's also an owlbear, which will hint towards a part of the Scarlet Citadel, because the owlbears the players will encounter are not just owlbears. The first one is, but after that they might be a little bit bigger, and they might use a word like dire to describe them. So there's an entire random encounter, and it's not that type of random encounter where it's just random encounter. Some of them are, but others are like literally tied in to the atmosphere of the Scarlet Citadel. For example, a very cool one I wanted to show you is Sleeping Fields. There is a field of flowers. If you move through it very carefully, then the flowers just stay the way they are, right? But if you move through it at a normal pace or running or whatever, it spawns a sort of stuff comes out of the flowers, basically. I don't know the English words. Pollen, which is the same word in Dutch, pollen. Clouds of pollen, and your players have to make a DC 13 wisdom check. For me, that will be DC 17, because my players are level 15. Or fall asleep for an X amount of hours. But it will also release some sort of smell or whatever to attract wildlife. So your players fall asleep, and, for example, I don't know, a pack of wolves shows up. So there's like one player like standing there with his sword and his shield, is like, oh shit, there's like 4 wolves there, and there's 3 of his party members are asleep, and he's the only one who made the save. Stuff like that. Surprise berries are in here. Like all of that evil stuff that Kobold Press likes to do to its players. Absolutely love it. So Red Tower is like the main town your players go to before going to the Scarlet Citadel, but they can spend 1, 2, 3, all the way up to like 4, 5 sessions in that freaking town if they want, and have some good role-playing opportunities, by the way, super cool role-playing opportunities, make good allies and friends, have some cool combat with some random encounters before they even think about going to the Scarlet Citadel. And I love that. I love that there's this, your players are doing all kinds of stuff. There's this waiting for Scarlet Citadel and preparing, and they might want to gain a level. That's metagaming, I know, but they might want to gain a level or get some knowledge from somewhere. Or there is this dude who has a house in the middle of the forest and it gets attacked by owlbears, and your players can go and save the house and then get stuff from that person. So that's great stuff right there. And then, only then, on page 32, we go into the Scarlet Citadel. No, we actually don't go into the Scarlet Citadel because the Scarlet Citadel itself is actually just a bunch of ruins. There is no Scarlet Citadel. The dungeon below the Scarlet Citadel, what used to be the Scarlet Citadel, is actually now called the Scarlet Citadel, but it's not the Scarlet Citadel. Level 0, the ruins above. Every section has this cool piece of artwork. Here you see 2 characters fighting a harpy type of, of creature, trying not to get their ass kicked or fall asleep or whatever. And that's cool. And it's there. This is the moment I want to talk about a system they use for their maps. Every level, this does not look spectacular. I know this does not look spectacular. I'll show you some other maps that look absolutely gorgeous. But I just want to show you something. This is a map. Your players are in these ruins, right? And they're walking around. They meet this owlbear nest. There's no owlbear, but there's an owlbear nest. But if your players decide to jump into this little black hole, they find themselves in a lower level. Now, how do you do that as a dungeon master? Well, the answer is very easy. Overlays. If you have the map folio pack, and if you play this thing physically, so not behind a computer, I strongly suggest you get yourself the map folio pack. I did an unboxing of this and I could not believe my eyes how cool some of these maps are, how awesome they look. They are just, I want to show you real quickly. I know this is not a review of the maps, but I want to show you real quickly. There's a map, there's another map. These are such high quality. These are absolutely amazing, but they use kind of an overlay system. If anything changes in the map, you can put this on there. In a matter of like seconds, you just, boom, you change it, right? So, for example, if they drop into a basement, you put this overlay and suddenly they are in a basement. If they go to a level above, you put an overlay there. But it's also used for like magical effects or environmental effects, or when your players solve a puzzle room or whatever and the room itself changes, you have like these overlays you can just put on there and suddenly the entire environment changed. I absolutely love that system. If you get this book, if you get this in physical form, get the map folio. Save up some money, get the map folio. They only will set you back. It's ridiculously low priced. I don't know how Kobold Press, they must be losing money on it. I mean, it's like 30, 40 bucks or something like that. It's ridiculous. It's just, if you have the virtual tabletop versions, of course you have them and you have the overlays and it's all automatically, and especially in Shard Tabletop, very well done. But, yeah, get the map pack. Really, it's amazing. And then there is, if they find the entrance, there's, by the way, an entrance. I want to show you real quickly this artwork. It really says, like Steve really says, show this to your players. He specifically says that, show this to your players, because after going from Zobak to Red Tower, getting some random encounters, getting some information about the Scarlet Citadel, doing some research, talking to people and whatever, this should be the moment they get into the Scarlet Citadel. This should be like that Indiana Jones moment where Indiana Jones goes into, I don't know, the Temple of Doom, or like the thing where the Christian cup is, what's it called? Like that dungeon type thing where he goes in. This is the moment your players decide, okay, if we go down these stairs, we go into the dungeon, and we're probably not all going to make it, because this is a very deadly dungeon for the levels it's supposed to be played for. But it also says that. And I think Steve does a really good job. I really became a big fan of Steve due to this book. He does not just give you a room and there's this, another room and there's this, another room and there's this, another room and there's a bit of description and then there's this. No, there is, first of all, there's the typical read this out loud type of boxes. This type of stuff, right? Which you shouldn't read out loud per se, but it's just something you can say out loud. But it gives you like constantly reminds you of how to run these certain things, how to run the dungeon crawl, how to show it to your players, how to tell the story, how to describe it. Like a DC 15 climb is not just there's a wall, DC 15 climb. No, it's an entire thing where you can fall off the right-hand side or the left-hand side. And it all gives different type of stuff. It's the same with the light and with the sound stuff he talks about. And it's the same with this. He says, show this artwork to your players because this is the entrance and it's supposed to be a special moment. And that is why I like this book. And that is why this book counts 200 pages, because he goes into it. He really goes into it. And then he gives you like another map. There's another level, so there is another map. And each of these levels are mapped out and they change in atmosphere completely because every level is completely different. Like this is like classic dungeon, right? This is like stone and carved out, made by dwarves probably. There is this cool piece of artwork you can show to your players just to set the atmosphere. Right, this really sets the atmosphere for players. The grittiness of the adventure. And every part and every level has been absolutely beautifully mapped out, and it's just a shame if you decide to not get the maps, like to put on your table if you're playing this. Like if you look at this is completely different from what we've seen before, and so are all the maps. I think there are in total 13 or something maps and a bunch of overlays. There's a bunch of these small overlays you can put on the maps. I need to drink from my coffee real quick. Thanks Patreon supporters for my coffee. Ah, cold coffee. Oh, I hate cold coffee. Okay, anyway. I'm not gonna talk like about all the levels and because this is a living and breathing dungeon. There is a bad guy who is an evil wizard who is practicing dark magic, like void magic and ley lines and everything. So he's becoming very powerful while sitting on the bottom of this dungeon. And he has a bunch of people on other levels of the dungeon working for him and controlling the undead and the trollkin and whatever. And everybody's scared of this one wizard. So everybody who lives in the dungeon, although not directly tied to the wizard, they do what they're told if the wizard would tell them to do something. So that's basically the entire thing. There's an entire system where there's different races, different people living in the dungeon. They are not directly tied to the wizard. Some haven't even met the wizard in person, but they all fear the wizard that's living down there doing the entire void magic thing. The cool thing is, for example, there's an entire level of which is a dwarven barracks, right? But your players might go in there, and you might be as a dungeon master, you might be like, hey, it looks like it's made by dwarves, and looks like chambers for dwarves and everything, and your players are like, oh, cool, dwarves. We might, if they're not too evil, we might be able to talk to some of them, and we might be able to stop them attacking us. But then, if they think that, they didn't do their research, because if they did their research, they would have known that there was a war between dwarves and trollkin there. The trollkin won, and the trollkin now live there, where the dwarves used to live. So if your players did not do the research, well, they will meet trollkin. If your players did the research, they will also meet trollkin, but they will know in advance. All that, that's like one example out of 100 examples of the amazingness of this. And I don't know how to explain this, but it's all very easy to follow. It's all set up in a way where you can just read it and you know what is going on. If you read about one, you need to know about the overarching story. But other than that, you can just read one level and just play it with your players and run it. And that's what I think is completely amazing about it. Then, monsters, magic, and everything. There is an entire section on monsters and magic and everything. Wait, I need to look at this artwork, by the way. Look at this. So, what they do here is, and I know a lot of you will be asking that question. So, if you've been watching until this point, make sure to put a timestamp if somebody asks that question. They use a lot of creatures from the SRD, the standard rules description from Dungeons & Dragons. So if you have your monster manual or you have a laptop, you can look them up on the interwebs. But they also use new monsters, and they also use monsters from the Kobold Press books. If they use monsters from the Tome of Beasts, for example, they will put the monster name and the book it is in between brackets. Like, it's this monster from the Tome of Beasts. Really cool, really handy to use, but you'll need that Tome of Beasts to run that monster. But there are also new monsters. I prepared this, but I cannot for the heck of me find where it... Oh, here it is. There's an entire section on new monsters. For example, the dire gelatinous cube. If a gelatinous cube is not good enough for you, just take a dire gelatinous cube, right? Dire is good, I think. There's other monsters. Dire owlbear, like I said. There is this ghostly foe. Look at this. This is amazing, right? This is so cool. Cool stuff. So there is a small bestiary with new creatures you won't find in the Tome of Beasts or the Creature Codex or whatever from Kobold Press or in the standard rules description. They put that in here. So if you need that, you can use it. A bunch of really wicked creatures. One of the wickiest creatures I've ever seen is this one. Weird spider with human hands or something like that. I don't know how to explain it, but it's really weird. So, like I said, no, I didn't say this, but I won't go too deep into the adventure itself because I'm not per se reviewing the adventure. I'm more reviewing the book. I hope that makes sense. There is an entire section on magic items you can get. There's a throwing hammer that makes you feel like Thor. It just comes back. That's all it does. Just throw it, it comes back, and all the attacks are magical. By the way, there's a ring that survived Mordor. There's all kinds of crazy stuff your players can find and retrieve from the Scarlet Citadel. And then this is cool. They added this. I really love this. The deep magic spells used by villains in this adventure are all in deep magic, but if you do not own deep magic, here they are. So if you do not own deep magic, you have a bunch of spells you can use for your characters. Also, these are just the spells some of the villains and NPCs use in the adventure, actually. And that is basically my review of Scarlet Citadel. I know my reviews are a bit different, but I've been experimenting with it, and people just like it when I go somewhat deeper into them and when my reviews are somewhat longer than they used to be. Scarlet Citadel, for me, is absolutely a dungeon crawl that belongs like a top shelf dungeon crawl. And by that I mean the overarching story is great, the setting is great, the feeling is great, the danger level is great. I feel like players will get into these sorts of situations a lot of the times, and that is great for a dungeon crawl. But more than that, Steve Winter did a really good job in explaining to the DM what the DM should explain to their players. And that is what I love about this. He really sets like the rules, the ground rules. It is a mini Dungeon Master's guide, and by playing this and by running this, I think as a Dungeon Master, you'll be a better Dungeon Master after running Scarlet Citadel, the Dungeon of Secrets by Kobold Press. If you made it till the end of the video, I thank you so freaking much. And I want to ask you a question real quick. Is there a classical feeling dungeon crawl out there in the third-party environment that you think is really great and I should check out? Make sure to put that in the comments below. Hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe if you're a Kobold Press fan. Until next video, bye-bye.